Hello everyone. This is the 39th part of the story, Magical Journey in Harry Potter World. Chapter 109, Water Visions, Magic of Water, Reactions. Quinn opened his eyes and, once again, he was in the water. That didn't surprise him. It was the last thing that would surprise him. He looked to his side and saw that he was lying on a white marbled floor. What's the deal here? Asked Quinn to himself and tried to get up, but then things changed. The second Quinn tried to get up, the entirety of water around him glowed Arctic blue, and Quinn's eyes widened because of an emotion he couldn't describe. All thoughts of getting up from the floor disappeared, and Quinn laid back, not moving a single muscle in his body. What is this? A warm and comfortable feeling enveloped Quinn, and it was like nothing he had ever experienced. Quinn felt like he had been living in unrelenting conditions, struggling with the harsh realities of the world, and now he was at the end of the road, finally able to rest in peace. His taut muscles all over his body relaxed as the magic in the water made him relax. Without Quinn knowing, the injuries he had healed to completion somehow healed some more and then went even further. Quinn didn't realize it, but his body was going through a process of healing so thorough and miraculous that it wasn't something he had ever experienced. Things that Quinn's own body didn't realize needed healing were healing. Every single part of the body was going through healing. Every system in the 11 organ systems, including the integumentary, skeletal, muscular, lymphatic, respiratory, digestive, nervous, endocrine, cardiovascular, urinary, and reproductive systems was covered. Not a single cell in Quinn's body was left behind. Every cell in his body was being filled with a never-seen-before vitality. While all this happened, Quinn was busy feeling his magic. For someone like him, who used all his magic every day, it was needed to know how much magic he had to plan for consumption. Quinn had an excellent awareness of how much magic was there in his body. Right now, Quinn was feeling something mysterious and enchanting. My magic is being regenerated, but at this speed. Every magical human had a magical core that held all their magic, and one could increase the capacity of said cores by using more magic. Quinn did that every day by using all his magic, and was absolutely confident in declaring that he had the best magic growth in the entire world. When someone used magic, they also regenerated it back, and everybody had their own magic regeneration speed. It depended on a few factors. The size of the magical core, as the capacity increased, so did the recovery speed. A person's health, if a person was facing injury, was sick because an injury, or facing some kind of affliction, their rate of recovery would be on a down low. A person's lifestyle, if one lived a healthy lifestyle, the recovery speed would be higher than a person with an unhealthy lifestyle. Rest, the recovery speed increased when a person was resting. Activities like relaxing or sleeping would exponentially increase the rate of recovery. And currently, Quinn was feeling his magic recover at a rate that he hadn't ever experienced before. It was even faster than when Quinn was asleep at his best health. At this rate, I could recover from 0 to 100 within 3 hours, no, maybe even faster. Quinn closed his eyes and immersed in the fabulous feeling. Quinn felt that he could stay in here for his entire life and wouldn't regret a single second of it. He was feeling so absolutely fantastic that it was borderline euphoric. Then Quinn felt a very gentle nudge of mental magic against his occlumency shields. It wasn't trying to break into his mind, its intention was different. The mental magic was asking for permission to enter. Quinn thought for a moment before deciding to send a legilimency probe towards mental magic poking against his shields. He wanted to see if he could find something out before allowing it entry, and the response Quinn got was that it was some kind of memory. A memory, how surprising, thought Quinn, feeling very intrigued. He had no idea who had constructed the Ivy Vault or the Sin Vault because of the lack of any kind of trace indicating their creator's identity, so to see a memory made Quinn think he would be able to find who created this vault. Quinn rescinded the legilimency probe and opened his occlumency shield to let the mental magic carrying a memory come in. Inside Quinn's mindscape, a mental representation of him looked up to see a glowing water orb followed by various shades of blue manifest, from the lightest of baby blues to the darkest of the midnight blues. And with that, the memory was revealed with a bright flash of blue. Outside, Quinn's eyes snapped wide open, and his eyes, both his irises and the sclera, turned a solid glowing Arctic blue. His chest raised up as the water surrounding him lifted Quinn up from the white floor, and as he lifted up, his body glowed in different shades of blue. The incoming memory engulfed his entire being. The memory started with a vision of extremely hot bubbling water. To match that, the water surrounding Quinn heated up, not to the point in the vision, but enough for Quinn to feel the heat. There was nothing at first, but slowly things started to change as microscopically small organisms emerged and developed in the extremely scorching water. Then the vision seemed to fast forward at an incredible speed as the water started to cool down, and with time which seemed to be eons, different mysterious creatures roamed those waters. The vision switched, and now Quinn saw a gigantic huge tsunami wave coming right towards him, and within seconds, it crashed against him. The water outside turned turbulent to match the memory and rode all over him. Rain and storm accompanied the tsunami waves, creating a tandem whose sole aim was to cause destruction. The enormity of the tsunami waves was more terrifying than whatever Quinn had ever seen, and it caused his heart to race in fear. Against the titanic waves, Quinn felt they could erase him like an insignificant bug. The vision shifted, and Quinn found himself among a myriad of fishes swimming underwater. There were all kinds of aquatic creatures that swarmed around and past him. He saw both magical and non-magical creatures gliding around. He looked down to see beautiful coral reefs below him. He felt a shadow cast upon him and the reefs, and when he looked over, he saw a large blue whale swimming over him. But then what Quinn recognized as a leviathan appeared above the whale, and the gigantic serpentine dragon dwarfed the whale and cast an even deeper shadow over both him and the blue whale. The image dissolved, and Quinn was suddenly in the air overseeing a forest full of lush and vibrant trees. Then, Quinn heard a rush of water. He turned and saw a horrifying flood trampling towards the woods. Within seconds, the angry flood crashed against the lush tree forest, and he could hear the shaking crunch of trees breaking through the roaring waves of water. Suddenly, the vision made Quinn descend into the forest, and there he saw the sickening sight of animals that lived within the forest struggling against the flood. Quinn heard the screams and witnessed the death of a beautiful ecosphere rich with flora and fauna, something that would take the area years to recover from. The scene once again disappeared like sand in the air to show a drastic change in the scenery. Quinn stood at the bank of a river stream, and on the opposite side of the stream was a herd of deer drinking water, and it was not just the deers but all kinds of animals near it that relied on the river. He looked into the clear water and watched fishes swimming by. Quinn followed a fish with his eyes, and suddenly a heron bird, who was standing by the bank, swooped in with its beak, picked a fish out of the river, and flew away. The vision again went through a change, and now he stood near a pond of steaming water. Quinn stood still for 10 seconds staring at the steaming water before, without warning, the water started to bubble, followed by an eruption as a water geyser emerged from the pond. The water from the geyser came down, steamy mist filled with the area, obstructing Quinn's vision. In the foggy mist, the atmosphere changed from humid wetness to a chilly cold. And when it cleared, Quinn stood on an ice cap over the vast, cold, unforgiving ocean. He was facing a spanning glacier that stretched across the horizon. Unlike the violent and noisy geyser, the glacier and ice caps were silent, reserved, and deadly. The ice cap beneath Quinn's feet abruptly cracked and, just as abruptly he had appeared, he sank down into the bone-chilling water. Quinn splashed around in the water. He tried to move and was unexpectedly successful. He raised his body and Quinn found himself coming up a stream of running water. At the end of the stream, Quinn heard a roaring noise, and when he reached the end of the stream, his eyes popped out because he was flung down from an edge of what seemed to be a gigantic waterfall. Quinn fell into the blasting water at the base of the waterfall, and suddenly there was no wild water. It became calm, and the model of serenity surrounded him. He felt his back touch and settle against a surface, and when Quinn opened his eyes, he was back in the aquatic vault, his back against the water marble, while staring at the light streaming through the water. Quinn didn't say anything and silently lay against the white marble floor. His mind was going through the scenes he had seen in the memory and contemplated what he had seen. His initial hope of seeing the creator of the aquatic vault had been dashed, and what he was shown had left a deep impression on his life. Quinn closed his eyes and let the feelings he was experiencing sink in. It was an indefinite time after which Quinn opened up his eyes, and they showed tranquility, unagitation, and peace. The teleportation insignia on Quinn's arm flashed with a blue light and whisked him away from the place, leaving behind a ripple. Scene break. The kraken watched one of its tentacles as it swished back and forth, and was about to add another tentacle to create a double swish when its yellow eye caught the special human coming out of the dangerous place, Kraken's eyes sparkled when it saw the special human, because it had decided today that it was going to push the tiny human a whole 7 times before letting him go. But then the Kraken noticed something odd with the special human. Through its mighty eyes, the Kraken could see a noble blue aura around the special human, something that hadn't been around the tiny human before. It had seen the same aura once before. It was a time before the Kraken had come to rest in this place and lived in the oceans. During those times, no creature of water dared to go against its mighty self, all of them bowed their heads to it and feared him. But one day, a traveler came to its territory, simply passing by, as if he was looking for a place to rest. The traveler had the same appearance as the fish people, merpeople, that lived along with him now. But unlike the weak fish people, the traveler was strong. The traveler had the same blue aura around him, and the water seemed to talk to him. The water seemed to enjoy moving along the traveler's will, enjoyed his touch, and seemed more lively when the traveler was around. The Kraken didn't know what the blue aura meant, but it knew that the blue aura was special. And now it was seeing it for the second time on the special human. In Kraken's mind, the special human just became more special. More special than almost any human it had ever seen. Scene break. Quinn stood on the lakebed in the center of the lake with his eyes closed. Water was one of the mysterious gifts of nature that supported and held life on Earth. Many indigenous communities had known the value of water for a long time. On the surface, water could be seen as food, a means of transport, an element for cleansing, purification, and initiation in cultural ceremonies. But deep down, water was something much more important, and while everybody knew it, Quinn became aware of it on a deeper level. Yet, it's the source, thought Quinn back to the sentence in the riddle. Fryer was right, it was the source. Water is the cradle of life. If the sacred gift of the earth was life, water was the custodian of life. Water was sacred because it held life on earth. A seed in the soil does not germinate until it receives water. No life on earth could live without water. But at the same time, there was a duality to water. It can give life, but it can also destroy it at the same time. While rain brought life to the earth, storms uprooted the same life that it nurtured. If water was life, then the absence of it was death. Without water, drought and famine would overrun the earth. Tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, tidal waves could wipe out all life in its path with no regard. They were the destructive phenomenon of nature that harnessed the power of the thing that covered 71% of all Earth. No matter how much any species on Earth tried to avoid it, they wouldn't be able to come out of it unscathed. Even humans, who built structures that tried to stand up to these agents of destruction, couldn't come out of it without suffering massive losses. In many mythologies across the world, floods were seen as divine retribution from higher powers sent to destroy the corrupt civilization so that rebirth could start from those waters. Water was the driving force of all nature, good or bad. Quinn had been looking at water from the perspective of magic. He thought about how it could be manipulated, how he could use it for his advantage. To Quinn, it was just something he could use magic on. The visions he had seen inside the vault made Quinn realize how small his view of water was. The visions had caused him to gain enlightenment of sorts. And from the bottom of his heart, Quinn wanted to showcase that enlightenment. Quinn deeply desired to show what he had experienced. For him, magic was the best way in which he could display his understanding, and the Great Lake was the best canvas, on which the brush of magic would showcase its charm. He knew that what he was about to do would garner a lot of attention, and if he was found out, it would be a giant pain in the future. But Quinn couldn't hold it back. Quinn could feel his magic demanded that he do it now, his ego desired it more than anything in the world. Every cell inside Quinn's body urged him to do it. His mind, body, and soul wished for it. So Quinn let his restraints go. For this one time, Quinn let desire trump logic and let his ego overtake his identity. Quinn's eyes opened, and instead of the stone gray, 2 orbs of glowing purple greeted the world. Scene break. Ivy, Harry, and Lily Potter walked together through a corridor to Lily's private quarter in Hogwarts. "How are your studies going?" asked Lily as they walked. Harry, looking at the chocolate card of Flavius Belby and trying to remember why it seemed familiar, shrugged in response. "Except potions with Snape, everything is fine." Lily furrowed her brows before sighing, "I have tried to talk to him, but he doesn't seem to want to listen." And Harry, it's Professor Snape. Harry rolled his eyes in response and shook the card in his hand, hoping that would jog his memory, but he drew a blank. What about you, Ivy, dear? Smiled Lily, looking at her daughter. While her son took after his father, her daughter took after her. Ivy had better grades than Harry, and Lily liked to think it was because of her. Everything is fine. Hermione and I are already on revision, answered Ivy smoothly. The redhead Potter twin took her studies seriously. Unlike Hermione, who seemed to have made books of her daily sustenance, she liked to learn by doing. She enjoyed the practical experience rather than the extensive reading that her best friend enjoyed. That didn't mean that she didn't read. Ivy still read much more than the average person, she just enjoyed casting magic more. Bookworms, muttered Harry at the mention of revision. Whatever, for eyes, retorted Ivy at the quip. Lily smiled at her two children's antics before asking, on the subject of revision, did any of you two buy Quinn West's notes this year? If you haven't, I'll give you the money to buy them, they are quite a good buy. The Potter twins stilled for a second and didn't reply. Both thought about their interaction with Quinn. Harry still hadn't talked about Peter Pettigrew with anyone other than Ivy. The twins had decided to research Peter on their own and to simply wait for the day their parents would talk to them about Peter on their own. Ivy, on the other hand, thought about the time travel events. It didn't help when the events had taken place just a few days ago. She still couldn't wrap her head around what happened that day. Not to mention when she found that Quinn was the one to save her and Harry from the Chamber of Secrets. As Lily didn't hear a response from her twins, she assumed that the two hadn't bought the guides. If you two want to buy it, I highly recommend them. Come to me for the money if you decide to buy them. Yes, replied the Potter twins at the same time. Ivy sighed and decided to look out at the scenery to distract her from her thoughts, but lo and behold, she saw the Great Lake in full view. Lovely, sighed Ivy, but then she stopped in her tracks when she saw ripples on the surface of the lake. Lily and Harry also slowed when they saw Ivy suddenly stop. What is it, Ivy? Asked Lily and walked towards her daughter. There are ripples in the lake, replied Ivy and pointed at the Great Lake in the distance. The mother and son followed Ivy's directions and saw rapid ripples on the surface of the lake. But the situation changed very quickly when they saw some very drastic changes in the lake. Their eyes widened to the limit when they saw a drain right in the middle of the lake. It started with a narrow point, but then, the water sank down in a line, and in a few seconds, the water started to split in the middle. The lake is splitting, spoke Harry, trying to put the scene in front of him in words. The girls didn't say anything and just stared at the bizarre scene in front of them, and within a minute, the entire lake was split into two parts, and they could see the lakebed path in the middle of the lake. Lily finally snapped out of it and realized that she had to do something. I have to alert the other professors. She turned to her children and ordered, you two go to your common room. Immediately after saying that, she ran off to alert the other faculty. Ivy and Harry, of course, didn't listen to their mother. They stepped closer to the edge of the corridor and stared at the lake. Ivy thought about who was causing this, and only one person came to her mind. The person who had come out of the Great Lake, heavily injured. But just like her previous many suspicions and conjectures about the person, she had no proof that he was the one causing this. Scene break. Friar, the Hufflepuff ghost, was gliding his merry way through the walls of Hogwarts. It was just another day of his ghostly life, but that changed when he got out a wall, and right in front of him was the view of the Great Lake. In the name of Helga herself. What? Exclaimed Friar as his belly jiggled in shock. He stared at the spit that was right in the middle of the Great Lake. The single body of water was turned into two with a clear and visible divide in the middle as the water tried to come back together, but couldn't because something was stopping it. And just when he thought that his ghostly self couldn't be more shocked today, another change happened in the Great Lake, and two whirlpools appeared in the lake, one on each side. Anyone who could see this would assume that it was because of magic, and Friar was no different. So his next thought was that whose work was this? Then the answer struck, and he uttered the name. Quinn. Is this because of the cursed vault down below? At first, he thought it couldn't be Quinn, this feat of magic was too much for a child of Quinn's age, but when he thought about it more, the more the possibility of it being Quinn got stronger. If it's indeed Quinn, then how is that child capable of splitting the lake? How strong is that child? Such thoughts revolved in the mind of the ghostly being. Scene break. Albus Dumbledore stared out of his window in his office, which was located on the headmaster's tower, and at a height only second to the astronomy tower. The headmaster with a long beard, who was over 100 years old, stared at the great lake with his aged eyes full of wisdom. He had just returned from the ministry after handling some business, and when he was passing by his window with a bowl full of sour candy in his hand, he saw the great lake divided into two with a whirlpool on each side. And now, as Dumbledore continued to stare at the strange and out-of-the-place phenomenon, he saw two massive masses of water come out of the center of whirlpools, floating up into the air. "Oh my, that's some impressive magic," chuckled Dumbledore in an impressed tone, but his eyes weren't portraying the same emotions. The blue eyes shined in a calculative and analytical light as Dumbledore stared at the great lake. The holder of the Elder Wand thought about who was doing this and where did they come from. Dumbledore first eliminated the possibility of the person being a student because the reserves and knowledge of water magic required was something he believed a student couldn't achieve. He knew of a few smart students in the castle, but even the smartest of them couldn't possibly achieve this. Dumbledore was so sure of it because the brightest student he had seen Hogwarts produce was the one named Tom Riddle, and even he couldn't do this while he was in his school years. So the remaining options were a professor, a resident of the Great Lake, or an unknown outsider. He eliminated the Great Lake resident because only merpeople in there could manipulate water, and he was sure that none of them was this capable. The remaining options were professors or an outsider, and he was leaning towards intruders because none of his professors were this powerful. "It's an outsider, then. I have to make sure the students are safe," said Dumbledore, and the bowl in his hand levitated to the nearby table as he walked out of the office with the death stick in his hand. But it turned out that by the time he got to the Great Lake, the waters had gone back to normal. Even after investigating, he didn't find anything but rich and heavy traces of advanced water magic. He talked to the merpeople inside, and the only unusual thing they told him was that the recent upheavals in the lake had been caused by the giant squid. Chapter 110, Music, Scheme, and Promise. It was a time of the year that Quinn really enjoyed. Just as his second year when he completed the icy vault, this year, he had completed the aquatic vault, and now he was feeling as cool as a cucumber. There was spring in his steps and dance in his moves. At random times, he would break into a dance and enjoy the vibe he was feeling. The same thing happened when he finished the icy vault. While he very much enjoyed going through the vaults, there was always a sense of urgency in the back of Quinn's head in which he needed to complete one vault a year. So when he wrapped up the aquatic vault, Quinn felt he was done for the year. If he had to draw a very loose parallel, then the cursed vaults to him were what examinations were to students. When they ended, students rejoiced like they were part of a nation that just got independence from an oppressive power. The only difference was that Quinn enjoyed the time he spent down in the vaults, unlike many students who didn't enjoy exams. And for the first time in months, Quinn was free, so he took out his violin, and with it, decided to cast some magic to lighten up that extra high-tension exam mood that plagued the Ravenclaw house every year. He rested the violin on his shoulder and his fingers on the strings, the other hand grasped the bow. He then gently descended on the strings to play a vibrant tune with sweet calm tones. At first, the sound was only audible inside Quinn's dorm room and partially audible to the nearby rooms, but as the minutes progressed, the fiddle of the violin traveled all across the boys' dorm. Some of the boys didn't appreciate the sudden disturbance when they studied for the exams, which were close, but no one got up from their seats and asked the player to stop. Something in the sound made them keep still and listen. In his room, Quinn smiled with his eyes closed. Seeing that no one was here to stop him from playing meant that the magic was working and, thus, he could increase the radius. Streams of magic traveled down from Quinn's arms to the violin and bow, and the sound started to flow with an extra something behind it. The slow tempo mixed with magic carried all the way to the common room and the girls' dormitory on the other side, and filled the entire Ravenclaw dorms with Quinn's music. Anyone who heard the music felt the tension drain from their bones, and calm seep into their minds and bodies. The slow sound made them forget about the stress of the incoming exams. That moment made them stop running, stop and kick back to get a relaxing pit stop. Quinn, who had his eyes closed while playing the violin, mixed two types of magic together to create his desired effect. He blended mind magic together with the enchanting sorcery of sound and music to create magical melodies. Using the wings provided by the harmonies, Quinn spread the influence of the mind arts to sway the mood of those who listened. This idea came from two sources. The first was, of course, the dreaded Sin Vault, which had messed with his mind and emotion on a deep level. The second inspiration was from his mind magic teacher, Alan D. Baddeley, who had once used mind magic to forcefully calm him down. Like Alan, Quinn subtly altered the listener's present mood. It wasn't as intrusive as the Sin Vault, but did reside on the same mental magic line. The use of sound magic was to increase the range and effectiveness of magic. Quinn, who had studied illusion magic, knew how to influence the human senses and recognized its efficacy while manipulating a target. People would subconsciously concentrate on sounds, and this was especially true for magic. So when Quinn laced the music with mental magic, the listeners got quickly influenced because their minds were concentrating on the music. Of course, there were downsides to this usage. It wasn't particularly effective when people were at guard against it, or if they had earplugs on and couldn't listen to the music, or were outright deaf. Alright, let's hype up this performance, thought Quinn, and the tune went through a drastic change. The rhythm started to build up, and the sound turned from gentle and calming to upbeat and exciting. Everyone in Ravenclaw started to tap their feet and bob their head to the rhythm of the cheerful tune. Slowly they were being guided from the calmness of the earlier piece to the bop of the current one. The person who felt the most was Quinn himself, who channeled his current spirit into the animated funk. His moves while he played the violin were wild and crazy. Oh, yeah, let's blow the roof off this place. Come on, move it, thought Quinn as he continued to play. The more he got into playing, the more freely his magic flowed, making everyone who was listening to the melody felt their hearts beat faster with excitement and exhilaration. Rum, pum, tum, and we are done, thought Quinn as he finished his piece and bowed to no one. Woohoo! I'm going to ace these exams. Bring it on. I'm going to smash the O.W.L.S. I'm going to get a girlfriend. Exams are nothing. I'm the smartest girl alive. Rack spurts. I will recreate Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem. Where is Professor Flitwick? I challenge him to a duel. Quinn's piece had left the people in a hyped-up state and filled with confidence and enthusiasm. It caused them to feel exhilarated and happy. Quinn smiled at the shouts coming from the common room and the dorms around him and knew that his showcase of mental and sound magic was a huge success. Looking at the violin and bow in his hands, Quinn nodded with a grin. Yeah, I still got it. Scene break. A shady figure stood under the shade of a tree looking at the abandoned house with the windows and doors boarded up. The shrieking shack, muttered the figure looking at the building, which was supposed to be the most haunted in Britain. To think this shack would be hiding something of such importance. Rivers Locke smirked at the thought. It seems this building is just like me. And that's why it's going to get me what I want. The smirk from his face dropped like it was never there, and he thought about the circumstances that brought him here. A bunch of cowards, they are. How can they be scared when I'm planning their moves? Rivers Locke was the one who created and managed the group known as Novellus Axionites. Just within a couple years, he had been able to gather people together into his banner, and he did it without ever showing his face. But the series of raids from the Aura office had instilled fear in the members of Novellus Axionites, and when he tried to bring down the order, he didn't get much of a favorable response. I didn't ask them to go to those gatherings, Rivers clicked his tongue in distaste. If they wanted to mingle together like fools, they could have at least made sure they weren't tracked. The disadvantage of being a hidden leader was that he couldn't be involved too deeply without being in danger of revealing his identity. As such, he couldn't control what his followers did outside of the plans he drafted for them. He wanted people to be good with the disillusionment charm. People who would be able to get around without others noticing. But all he got was some dumb bozos who were absolutely shit at magic, who were complete rock brains and didn't have an ounce of cunning in them. But this opportunity was too critical for him to miss. The school was about to end soon, and if he didn't act, he would have to wait for the next few months to get the next chance. Rivers didn't have those months. The auras were striking hard on his minions, and he couldn't be sure what would be the situation down the line. And this opportunity was what he needed to gain the momentum back. If he could pull this off, then the world would know about Novellus Axionites, and all the members who refused his calls like cowards would come scurrying back. I guess I will have to do this on my own. This is too important for me to leave it to the idiots, muttered Rivers. He decided that he would be going inside on his own with a couple more members that were at his disposal. The gears in his mind turned as he continued to stare at the abandoned and decrepit shack. Scene break. Quinn shimmied his way to the hospital wing with a rabbit in a cage. The rabbit had been very sick, infected with rabbit calicivirus, which was an illness that had an incubation period of 48 to 72 hours. Poppy had given him the brown rabbit and told him that he had a day and a half to return with a perfectly healthy rabbit. He knew nothing about calicivirus, it was a type of hemorrhagic disease virus. So he had only 48 to 72 hours to learn everyone about the disease and then heal the rabbit before it died. The research had been easy but lengthy, so by the time Quinn was done learning about the rabbit calicivirus, the rabbit was suffering from lethargy and fever. Quinn eradicated the disease from the brown rabbit and then healed the fluffy bunny. He did it within the confines of the time Poppy had given him. The rabbit was back to new in 24 hours. Poppy is slowly getting used to my learning speed. If I was still spending time at the vault, it probably would have taken me a day and a half. Quinn walked across the tiled floor of the hospital wing towards Poppy's office, as he looked to the sides at the beds to see if she was tending to some students. And at the end of the wing hallway, Quinn stopped because he came across two people who he wasn't expecting to see in the hospital wing. Daphne. Astoria, said Quinn, finding the Greengrass sisters with Astoria sitting on the bed while Daphne sat on a stool by her side. Multiple thoughts ran through his mind within the second he first laid eyes on the sister. What came out of his mouth was, "Have you seen Madame Pomfrey? I have something to talk with her. She is out for the moment. Went down to the dungeon to meet Professor Snape to get some potion ingredients," replied Daphne, and while Quinn couldn't get a read from her expression, her body language told him that she was feeling uncomfortable. "You just missed her. She went out a minute ago," chimed in Astoria with a smile on her face. Quinn turned his eyes to the younger sister, and his stone-grey orbs noticed a pale pallor on her skin, a thin sheen of sweat on her face. Her whites of eyes were muddled, and many other signs that Quinn had learned to pick up from his time with Poppy learning healing magic. She is obviously sick. The fact Poppy had to go out to obtain potion ingredients means this isn't a common ailment. I wonder what plagues her, thought Quinn before smiling and asking, "May I join you too, ladies?" Daphne opened her mouth to speak something, but Astoria beat it to her. "Yes, please. You're free to join us," spoke Astoria with a smile on her face. Daphne glanced at her sister with an inscrutable expression that Astoria ignored, as she continued to smile towards Quinn. Quinn nodded and pulled a stool from beneath the bed. He took a seat and set the rabbit cage down on the floor. Astoria was sick, and Quinn didn't want to make it worse by introducing a rabbit to the girl. She does look the type who loves fluffy and cute things. "How have you two been?" asked Quinn, opening up the conversation. "I hope you two are feeling fine, nothing serious, I hope." Quinn knew the topic would come with their location, so he decided to use it as an opener. "Thank you for asking, we are doing fine, just a small dip in health," replied Daphne, matching eyes with Quinn. "Ah, it is serious, then," thought Quinn, and then he heard Daphne speak up. She must be worried. Even though she had used "we" in his answer, all three knew who she was talking to. "You don't have to lie. We can't change anything about it, so why hide it?" sighed Astoria and softly glanced at her older sister. She turned to Quinn and spoke without hesitation. "I have dash." "Astoria." "No, I'm telling him. There is nothing to hide, and I don't get why you get to decide. I'm the one who has it. I should be able to decide who to tell and who not to," answered Astoria in a firm tone, which was less weaker than her usual voice. Daphne softly sighed and closed her eyes in acceptance. She knew her little sister better than anyone and knew that when Astoria decided to do something, then even their parents wouldn't be able to change her mind. "I have a condition known as blood malediction. A blood malediction is a curse of the darkest type, passed down to the descendants for generations. Even the most common type of blood malediction is known to stay in the family for half a century," said Astoria with a smile on her face as she was retelling a fascinating story. "One of our ancestors was cursed with the curse, and from then on, the curse resurfaces even though it skips some generations. Our great-grandfather had it, and for 2 generations, our family was free of it, but it turned out that our generation wasn't so lucky because I got it. Quinn held his expression in place as he continued to listen to Astoria, and while the younger Greengrass spoke, Quinn felt the older sister glance at him from time to time. There are many types of blood malediction. The one I have causes debilitation, leaving me frail and sickly. From time to time, I suffer from these lapses in health that will leave me in a very fragile state. The usually young and bubbly of the Greengrass sisters smiled helplessly and sighed. Unfortunately, the curse also reduces my lifespan. None of my ancestors who suffered from the curse ever lived past 50. Quinn silently listened to Astoria tell her story without uttering a word, and while he heard all of it, two things stood out to him: the blood malediction and the resignation in her voice hidden behind her smile. I see. So you have a blood malediction. Now, that is rare, isn't it? Started Quinn, and as he spoke, Quinn removed his Hogwarts robe from his shoulder. A curse that carries down to the descendants. Descendants that suffer from their ancestors' mistakes or misfortune. I guess if you can get your ancestors' fortunes, then getting their misfortune is a fair part of the deal. And while getting the curse is unfortunate, and I might seem presumptuous for saying it, I don't think I like the fact that you have accepted you'll never get rid of the curse. Quinn folded up the sleeves on both of his hands and secured them in place so they wouldn't slip. Astoria, don't get me wrong, I like the fact that you don't live your life in despair about your unfortunate circumstances, but your reason is wrong. You should happily live because you know that one day your curse will be erased and you will get to live just as everyone else does, not because you are trying to live the most of your limited life. He smiled a wide grin as he spoke. Where is the fun in that? If you accept that, then there is no hope. That's no fun at all. Quinn put out both of his hands towards Astoria and gestured with his finger as he asked, "Give me your hands." Astoria and Daphne looked at Quinn with bewilderment. The light-hearted tone that Quinn spoke with made it seem that he was not taking this clearly heavy condition seriously. But the words did make some sense to them, and that left both the girls confused. "Come on, now, don't be scared. I won't eat you." "Give me your hands," asked Quinn once more. Astoria looked at Daphne for guidance, but the look in Daphne's eyes reflected the same confusion as her. So she hesitantly placed both her hands in Quinn's. "Excellent, thank you for trusting me," smiled Quinn and gently grasped Astoria's petite hands. "Now, let me show you some nifty magic. I think you two will like this." He pointed at his and Astoria's joined hands. The two Greengrass sisters looked down and witnessed the glowing red veins on Quinn's visible arms and hands. "Astoria, I don't think you realize that we, who possess magic, are in the presence of something truly grand and extraordinary." The two girls watched with wide eyes as the glowing red veins seemed to creep from Quinn's hands to Astoria's hands through the connections of their hands. Magic has infinite potential, infinite. There is nothing that magic can't accomplish. Those who possess magic can be saints, gods, devils, or anything they want if they understand and know how to use what was so graciously given to them. The glowing red veins traveled up Astoria's arm, and as Quinn spoke, her entire body was covered in fiery red glowing veins. Astoria could feel a comfortable heat all around her body. "I know this curse has been in your family for generations. And in all that time, there hasn't been a cure to this ailment that you don't deserve. But losing hope is losing the battle before even starting the fight." The glowing red veins on Quinn's forearms and Astoria's entire body turned into a sparkling blue color, showing a beautiful charm to the world. Astoria, who had been feeling a comfortable heat, now with the color change, felt a refreshing cool feeling envelope her body. She closed her eyes because it was the most pleasant she had ever felt. It felt like she was swimming in cool water, and she let go of everything and simply enjoying the bliss as she listlessly floated in the coolness. But then her eyes snapped open as she felt the frailness and sickness lessen and slowly disappear from her body. It wasn't just that, but the true shock was that her own delicate constitution felt strength and vitality that she had never felt before. She had never felt so lively. Astoria felt like she could do anything right now. Astoria looked up from her hands and looked at Quinn, who was smiling with confidence. "Astoria Greengrass, I, Quinn West, here and now, declares this to you. From this moment onwards, I assure you that as long as I am alive, you will never ever again feel the presence of the blood curse." Quinn's smile widened, and as did the eyes of Astoria. "I will ensure that you will never suffer and feel weak because of the blood malediction. You will live a long life, and it will be a healthy life just like anyone else's." Astoria felt Quinn's grip slightly tighten as he announced. "It's my promise to you, and I will never forget it." This marks the end of part 39 of the story, Magical Journey in Harry Potter World. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.